Now, with your cardiovascular system, chronic stress can lead to an increased risk of a variety of illnesses, including high blood pressure. I remember when I was younger in Nigeria, it was a poster I would see as part of public health that high blood pressure is a silent killer. Many people do not know that they're walking around with really, really sky high blood pressures until, unfortunately, maybe they suffer a stroke or heart attack. Now, this can be as a result of chronic stress. Hello everyone, welcome back to Travel Light. It's your friend Dr. Unoma, and for my new friends, I'm a psychiatrist based in Glasgow, Scotland, and more importantly, I am a believer. I'm a child of God, and I am just so convinced that Jesus cares deeply about us. He wants us to enjoy freedom, especially in our emotional and mental health. So here at Travel Light, we're exploring mental and emotional health through the eyes of our Good Shepherd, Jesus. We're on a journey exploring what it looks like to give access to the Lord in this space. So again, welcome back to Travel Light. I want to take a minute to just say, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, this is a great time to do that. Just hit the subscribe button real quick. It means every time new content comes out, you're first to know, and you can type first in the comment and all that, like I see on other people's channels. So funny. And if you enjoy the content, please do give it a like and share it with your friends who you think will benefit from hearing what we have to say here on the podcast. In the previous episode, I started a new series, I should say, about stress, which I think is an exceedingly important topic, especially for our modern times in this digital age. To remind us of what we discussed, I said that stress is the body's response to pressure or perceived threat. We have a God-given built-in system to manage challenges that arise in our environment. And this system is meant to be adaptive. It's to help us to grow and thrive to the pressures that we're surrounded with. Now, these pressures, which we'll call stressors, can come from a variety of avenues. It can come from work, from finances, from relationships. And we mentioned that everyone perceives stress differently. Now, stress can be acute, meaning that this threat is there, right now, and your body knows that it has to do what it needs to do to get you out of that danger zone. Again, this is short term. The whole point is that it takes you to a place of safety. It is protective. It is adaptive. However, when these stressors persist for a very long time, it means that we get into a place of chronic stress. And chronic stress is not great. It's insidious, it is nasty, and can have very damaging effects on your physical health and your mental health, and ultimately your quality of life. Now, I believe that understanding stress and knowing how to manage it is very crucial for navigating life in this day and age. So we're going to park today on the biology of stress. I promised we were going to do that in the previous episode. And I'm a self-confessed geek. I'm not making any apologies for that. And you're probably asking me, what is the point in me learning about this, Dr. Unoma? Now, I'll tell you why learning about the biology of stress is important. What's the point in knowing about how your body works? Now, knowing how stress affects your body will help you recognize when you are in stress mode. Some of us don't actually know. And it means that this knowledge arms you with the tools so that you are proactive in managing stress. Now, remember, we all perceive stress differently. Everyone's different. And how we respond also differs. So it means with this increased self-awareness, we can approach stress management in a way that works for us as individuals. Also, and I'm going to keep harping about this, chronic stress is nasty and can have significant implications for your physical and mental health. So by understanding how chronic stress works, it means that you as an individual can take proactive steps to managing, preventing, and mitigating the risks and the effects on your body. And overall, we're looking for you to have better well-being, better mental health, better emotional health, better physical health. And finally, we all need support from time to time. So if we get to a place where we're overwhelmed and we're finding it difficult to manage, knowing how you work means that you're able to articulate your needs best to people when you do need support. So ultimately, we all need that. We all need to learn. I want to raise your awareness so that you're empowered to make smart choices for you. Yeah? Have I convinced you yet? I hope so. Now let's talk biology, and don't worry, I'll keep it as basic as possible. With a stress response, as with most things in the body, it's very complex. I'm going to introduce you to some key players in this system. We have the brain, Yeah, duh. And there are two bits in the brain that are especially important. Now, there's the hypothalamus, which is what I'll call the command center for this function, and also the pituitary gland, which basically is connected to it, sits below it. Then we have the adrenal glands, which sit all the way here in your abdomen on top of your kidneys. Now, there are two systems. I'm getting ahead of myself now. There are two systems that work alongside each other in this stress response. There's the autonomic nervous system, which I'm sure you would have learned about in secondary school. This is what gets activated in the fight or flight response. And you have another system that kind of is like a little sister or bigger sister, actually. It's a mouthful, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis. So I'm going to call it the HPA axis for the purposes of this podcast. Okay, so autonomic nervous system and HPA. So when you're faced with stress, when something, in quotes, triggers you, what happens is that you have the hypothalamus, can't say that word, the hypothalamus gets this information and then sends these nerve impulses through your spinal cord and then gets through to your adrenal glands, which again sits in your tummy. And the adrenal gland gets activated to release key hormones. These are adrenaline and noradrenaline. These hormones are really powerful and they surge very quickly through your blood vessels, go straight to your heart, and very soon your heart starts pumping harder and quicker. And you will probably experience that as you having palpitations or feeling like your heart's really beating heavier in your chest. So that's what's happening there. The body is basically telling your heart, okay, you need to get blood to all the organs that need to move right now so we can get Unama away from this danger. Your blood pressure in your veins, or your arteries rather, gets increased, and your liver, which is very good at storing resources, fuel for your body for a rainy day, gets activated to convert glycogen to glucose. Glucose is what your body needs to get you fueled up to basically get up and go. So glucose gets released to the bloodstream. We then come to your lungs. So the wee tubes in your lungs that allow air to come in, they get wider so they can allow more air in, so that ultimately your body has more oxygen to burn fuel so that you can move quicker and faster. Now, other things that happen as well would be, your immune system gets activated to work better so that you can repair quicker. And these changes in blood flow will also lead to you feeling more focused, more alert, just ready to go. Blood gets diverted from systems that don't need it. So your digestive system basically doesn't need to be doing anything at that point, getting you out of safety or out of danger. So that gets a wee rest. And your urinary system also gets a wee rest as well. So you're releasing less urine at that point. And ultimately, there's this increase in metabolic rate at that point. The whole point of this is to get you activated so you either fight that danger in front of you or get out of there as a flight. Now, this is meant to last basically, or act very quickly and act in the short term to get you to a place of safety and get you back into a place of equilibrium. Now, if the danger persists for a while, the HPA axis now gets activated. So the hypothalamus also is involved in this. It will release a hormone called, why am I doing this? Corticotropin releasing hormone. Bear with me. And I'll call it CRH, then goes to your pituitary glands, that wee gland that sits beneath the hypothalamus as well. And that gland would then release another hormone, which would then send signals to, again, your adrenals, and your adrenal would then release some more hormones, the key one being cortisol. The point of these hormones basically is to keep you going in this stress response. Now you have increased blood volume and increased blood pressure. Your body then gets activated to create more glucose, and there is a reduced sensitivity to insulin so that there is more glucose in your body for a long period of time. Now, in this phase, your immune response gets down-regulated, meaning that it's not as active. Your immune system doesn't work as well, I should say, maybe. Fat and protein gets mobilized so that you've got more fuel for your body to keep going and going and going. So the whole point is to sustain the stress response for a while. Now this is really important. When the cortisol levels, so the cortisol gets released from the adrenal in this HPA axis, when the levels get high in the blood, your brain is actually really smart, and it has these sensors that pick up that there's too much cortisol in the blood. So it will then shut off this HPA axis. It's called a negative feedback loop. The whole point of that is to allow your body to get back again to homeostasis, back to equilibrium, and then your body gets to chill out essentially. Now, the extent of the stress response depends on how big this perceived threat is, how the degree of the stress. But again, that's complex, but basically. So we're going to move on a wee bit now. So there are different models of how stress is looked at in medicine. And a really good one, there's this model of stress being in 3 different phases. So there's this alarm phase where, again, I mentioned that there's a threat, this trigger, and your body gets into this mode where it's the whole point of it is to get you back into a place of safety, with your heart rate getting quicker, your blood pressure is getting higher, your muscles are activated, your focus is, narrowed down so you can do what you need to take yourself again to a place of safety. And hopefully after that, your body then gets back and is recalibrated and goes back to equilibrium. Now, if this stressor persists, I mentioned this HPA axis gets activated. And the point of it is your body, again, is trying to sustain that response so that you can keep it going. This is the resistance phase. Now, in this phase, your body is, whilst sustaining the response, your body is also trying to get back into a place of balance. In this phase, you might find that you have poor sleep, your immunity levels aren't wonderful, your mood might be unstable, there might be mental fatigue, you might be feeling a little bit more irritable, and respond quicker to anything that might feel like stress. So that's that second phase. And remember that in this point, your body is still using quite a lot of its resources to keep you in that place of sort of go in order to deal with whatever the stressor is perceived to be. Again, it's still meant to be protective. But I have to say that at this point, your body is getting a little bit, is wearing off, getting a bit tired. Now, as we go on, and your body again is still trying to maintain this level of being on and the stress response, what happens is your body then gets a little bit overwhelmed, because remember, in this stress response, we have diverted a lot of the resources from things we need to do. So things like fertility, making babies, and digestion, and immunity, and all that kind of stuff is diverted to you breaking down glucose and getting you to a place of safety. So that balance is lost, and your body then is getting a wee bit tired. So the resources that it has get really depleted, and your body essentially goes into exhaustion. In this stage, this is where we don't want to be. We're now in the place of chronic fatigue. You've got poor health. Maybe you're finding yourself more susceptible to infections and things like that. Your mental health is really wonky. You're not able to concentrate very well. You're watching EastEnders and you can't follow what's happening on it because you're not quite there. You're feeling a little bit numb and detached, and you might actually maybe have developed a mental illness. Now, this is what we don't want. This is the effect of chronic stress with the HPA system being on for much longer. The issue here as well is that many of us are not aware of it, because we, as human beings, we're quite resilient actually, and we are good at doing what we need to survive. But your body keeps the score, as they say. Your body is still doing all that and is still being depleted in its resources. So when we're in situations where we have ongoing work pressures, relationship conflicts, financial worries, and maybe traumatic events that are not resolving, your body doesn't get to chill out and get back to a balanced state, and then your body goes out of whack essentially. Now, that hormone I mentioned earlier, cortisol, which is actually your friend, becomes a bit of an enemy. Now, I mentioned to you before that this cortisol, um, it gets quite high with this HPA axis, and your brain is actually quite good at picking up when it's too high, and then will switch off the axis so that then it stops releasing cortisol and your body gets back into equilibrium. However, when this cortisol keeps going on and on for a long time, that system becomes out of whack. That negative feedback loop doesn't work as well. So the cortisol levels persist. They're high in your system all the time, and that is not good. Now, chronic stress, as I mentioned, has and can have a really negative effects on your whole body and affects a variety of your systems and can increase the risk of a variety of health problems. So I'm going to go through them just so we can see what we're dealing with. Now, with your cardiovascular system, chronic stress can lead to an increased risk of a variety of illnesses, including high blood pressure. I remember when I was younger in Nigeria, it was a poster I would see as part of public health that high blood pressure is a silent killer. Many people do not know that they're walking around with really, really sky high blood pressures until, unfortunately, maybe they suffer a stroke or heart attack. Now, this can be as a result of chronic stress. So when the stress response is activated for such a long time because of inflammation, your heart rate being elevated for a long time, your blood pressure, your blood vessels being squeezed shut or tighter, because that is part of the stress response, that can be very dangerous and can contribute to illnesses in your cardiovascular system. In your immune system, chronic stress has been linked with weakening the immune system and can make you more liable to infections, illnesses, and autoimmune disorders as well. And unfortunately, we're not able to fight these organisms that can come our way, or it can prevent us from being able to manage injuries if we do face them. Your digestive system is another one. If you have chronic stress, you can have difficulties with things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Acid reflux is another one, or inflammatory bowel disease. And your gut flora. So in your large bowel, you have bacteria and other organisms that live there, and they actually are meant to serve you. They're meant to help you stay healthy. But with chronic stress and inflammation that can arise from that, it can actually disrupt the flora in there as well. And that can make your digestive system symptoms even worse. We've probably all experienced this before when we're in states of chronic stress. We can have muscle tension and stiffness, pain, particularly in your back, in your neck, in your shoulders. That can be a result of stress. Another big one we don't talk about is the effect of chronic stress on reproduction. Chronic stress can lead to menstrual irregularities. So I've had this before. I remember in my second year of medical school, I had left my study until way later than I should have. And I remember that I had a delay in my my time of a month coming, which was very unusual for me. And I was like, ooh, what's going on? That was an example. So it can disrupt, because there's all these hormones going on and all the systems. It can actually disrupt your menstrual cycle. It can lead to difficulties with conception and also sexual dysfunction as well. And particularly for me, I am very interested in mental health and the impact of chronic health. I see this in my practice all the time. Chronic stress can be, and is, stop saying can be, is a significant risk factor for anxiety disorders, depression, and other mental health disorders. I mentioned in a previous episode that if one has been diagnosed with a bona fide mental illness and, they have been doing well on medication and they're stable and things like that, being in institutions where there's ongoing stress or even acute stress, is pretty profound, can lead to a relapse of mental illness. And remember that stress hormones like cortisol, they affect different brain regions and ultimately can affect your mental health. You can have difficulties with attention, your ability to make decisions, your ability to process information, and that can cause problems. Even if you're working and you're already, in a high stress environment, and then it kind of perpetuates the cycle. So super important. And one thing that's come to light now, and something I'm also very interested in, is how in stress you can have sort of chronic low-grade inflammation running through your body, and that can cause a variety of problems. including heart disease and diabetes and autoimmune disorders. So it is imperative that we are aware of what stress looks and feels like and the potential impact it can have on us. Another very interesting potential impact of stress on the body would be actually your genes and your DNA. There is some indication, and I'll put the information in the description, that stress can lead to some changes in the way your DNA is expressed, or your genes are expressed. So chronic stress can basically change the way your stress regulation and mental hormones, mental health genes are expressed. And these changes that are made on the epigenetic level, these epigenetic changes can be passed down to your offspring and also ultimately affects behavior across generations. Now, these modifications in your genes and the way they express can make some people more resilient to stress, but for other people can make them more vulnerable to stress-related disorders like depression and anxiety. So that's big, isn't it? I find that really, really interesting. So in conclusion, and I know I have rattled through the biology of stress, and I hope it's all made sense to us. But in summary, the stress response system is complex, but it is, it's almost predictable in the way that it works. And knowing how it works means that we're able to manage things better. So when you're stressed, your body activates a system and releases hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to help you cope with the stressor. Now, acute stress, as I mentioned, is not necessarily an issue, but when it's persistent, when it's too much over time, it can really mess up your stress system and can lead to a variety of health problems, including high blood pressure, weight gain, and a weakening of your immune system, which is a really big one. Stress can also make inflammation worse in the body and can lead to many diseases. As I mentioned as well, chronic stress can be a risk factor for mental illness, or could be a destabilizer for people who are already diagnosed with mental illness. And even at the genetic level, stress can change how your genes work without actually changing your DNA. And this can affect your health in the long run and, interestingly, generations to come. So it's really important that we understand how stress affects our body and helps us to see why managing stress is so important to staying healthy. By learning about stress biology, as I mentioned, we can make better, smart choices for ourselves, and we can reduce the impact of chronic stress on our health. So I would love you guys to really reflect on what we've discussed today. And if you want to go back to the episode and listen again to understand the biology of stress, I do believe it can really help you to, figure out your way of managing stress. And we will delve deeper into that in future episodes. If you want me to dig deeper on anything we've touched on today, I would love to do that. Just let me know in the comments. Before we sign off today, I want to leave you with a final thought. Wow, isn't your body amazing? Like, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Psalm 109 verse 13 says, "For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest part of the earth." Your body is amazing. You've been built to do amazing things with it by God. So it's good that we honor and take care of it. Thank you so much again for paying attention and listening to the episode today. Once again, go ahead and subscribe and like and all that good stuff, and have a lovely rest of the day. And till the next time, remember to travel light. See you later. Bye.